Okay, so it's 5 o'clock on Wednesday, the 19th of October, and this is our guest speaker series. We are really thrilled this evening to have two guests with us to learn about America Serves and how America Serves is going to become New Mexico Serves and what the status is on all that. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker, Lindsay Hodkinson, a former Army spouse, now leads the Communities of Practice at Syracuse University's Institute for Veterans and Military Families, IVMF. In this role, she brings together communities of coordinated care networks across the country to share in best practices and elevate their level of service delivery. And I understand that our other guest is retired Air Force Colonel Barb Carson. Welcome so much, Barb. I haven't met you before. I'm glad that you're here. And you're the managing director for programs and services at the Institute, I understand. Okay. Well,
Thank
great.
you.
Good. Thank you so much. Why don't we just go ahead and start this off? Lindsay, would you like the PowerPoint to be set up?
Sure. Thank you, Claudia. And I can kind of go into a little bit more. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to be here today and have this conversation. Thought it would be really valuable to give you a bit of an update on the project and then kind of where we are and kind of what we intend to do over the next few months. And then, of course, thank you for all of your work and helping us get to this point. So as Claudia said, I'm Lindsay Hodkinson. I've been here at the Institute almost 7 years, work on our community services team where I'm responsible for bringing together many of our coordinated care networks, like our America Serves networks, to be able to share in best practices and share insights and updates. And then I'm joined by our managing director of programs and services, Barb Carson. Barb, I don't know if you want to give a quick intro to yourself and what you do.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, I'm pleased to join you. And Claudia, I've heard so much about you and this team, so I'm looking forward to our time together and very grateful to have the chance to work with Lindsay. I have been with the IVMF for just 6 months, but I've been working with them since 2013. I'm a former executive at the Small Business Administration in Washington, D.C. And as Claudia, yes, you said, I'm a veteran, but I'm also a military spouse, and I'm also the mom to Airman Carson, who's in the Utah Air National Guard. So this work is really important personally, as it is to Lindsay as well, as we want to work with you. I also had 2 of my children in Albuquerque, so I have an affinity for the state of New Mexico and look forward to our project together.
Awesome. Great to hear that, Barb.
Thank you. And then can we advance the slide? I don't have control, right? Okay. So just kind of wanted to go through a little bit of where we are on the project and kind of our approach and a little bit of a refresher. I think most everyone is pretty familiar with the work that we do here at Syracuse University, but I thought it would be really valuable to kind of go into that a little bit. So you can go to the next slide, please.
Lindsay?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we do have Representative Debbie Sarananya, who has just signed in, and I know she's in her car. Debbie, I'd just like to introduce you to folks. Can you unmute yourself for a minute? Maybe not. Anyway, if she's able to come on, and we've also got Senator Harold Pope, who's just joined. Senator Pope and Representative Sarananya, if you could go ahead and unmute yourselves, I'd just like to call you out and thank you so much. The 2 of them, Senator Pope and Representative Sarananya, carried a bill in the last session, and the bill itself didn't go through, but the intent of what they wanted to do, which was to fund the landscape assessment, was rolled into another bill. So each of them gave $50,000 to get this baby off and running, and I just want to recognize them for their heavy lift for doing that. So, okay, Lindsay, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And please feel free to interrupt me anywhere along here. Really would like to see this as a conversation. So please ask questions, and looking forward to this. So I always kind of like to start with why Syracuse University? I feel like that's a question that we get so often. What does this small, relatively small private university in upstate New York, why do you guys care so much about veterans? And what's really interesting is Syracuse University, we have such a storied history supporting veterans dating back to World War I, where we actually have the longest running ROTC program in the country. And then that continued through World War II when our then Chancellor Tolley actually opened the doors to the university, welcomed veterans back to campus, and then almost doubling our student body overnight. And also, fun fact, Chancellor Tolley was in that original class of the SATC, which is now the ROTC, and he was one of the authors of the original GI Bill. So the university's commitment to veterans was really renewed in 2014 when our now Chancellor Kent Syverud joined the university, and he said in his inauguration speech, committing Syracuse University to being the best place for veterans, and really has renewed that every year since he's been there, and is an incredible support to not just the Institute, but all of our military-facing programs. And then what we're so proud of, and you can kind of see it in the slide here, is in 2020, the university actually opened the National Veterans Resource Center at the Dan and Daniello building, which you kind of see here on campus. It houses not just the Institute for Veterans and Military Families, but also our Office of Veterans and Military Affairs, Army and Air Force, ROTC, and then a number of different veteran supporting initiatives on campus. You can go next slide. One more. So just kind of wanted to give a quick overview of what we're looking to do with the project. So our overall purpose for our landscape assessment is to assess the state of New Mexico's readiness to implement a statewide coordinated care network like America Serves, to be able to serve the state's military service members, veterans, and their families. We'll go through a number of activities to make sure that we're collecting information across the entire state with necessary stakeholders, different communities, to ensure that we're able to make recommendations that best suit all populations across the state. Once that finding and collection of information is complete, we'll then go back, analyze it, and create a report that details all of those findings of the landscape assessment and provide recommendations on how New Mexico could implement a coordinated care network. We'll also create some companion documents like a briefing deck to be able to go back out and engage with those stakeholders that were brought in to help us identify any gaps and needs across the state, to be able to share with them. We'll also build kind of like a scoping document for phase 2, which would be that implementation of a statewide coordinated care network. So while we're really focused right now for assessing the entire state and understanding the landscape and where the highest needs exist, where there may be gaps, what makes the most sense in building a coordinated network, we'll really kind of get into the phase 2 of implementing and launching where that makes the most sense in a subsequent phase. So you can go next slide. And I kind of really would like to take a step back here. You can go one more slide. I'd like to kind of take a step back here and revisit why our approach to coordinated care is the way that it is. So really through our research, we know that veterans have identified access to and navigation of care and resources as their number one issue in transition, and it remains an issue after transition for not just them, but also their families. We also know that no single organization can address this challenge on their own, and really feel that the solution lies in a community working together, addressing the comprehensive needs of a person, and that we're able to tell all that story through data and measurements and key performance indicators, and then communicating that back to the community so that it is done in a transparent way. Next slide. And as we start, we started this work in 2014, and we were really kind of the first ones out there doing this on the ground in communities alongside. And, bringing us toward today, we've really noticed a shift in how communities are approaching this type of work. So we really noticed how communities are much more informed of what they're looking for. Oftentimes there is a landscape assessment that is commissioned ahead of implementing any kind of network to really understand what needs exist and how to tailor that network to best fit those needs. We've also noticed a lot more collaboration and a holistic approach to building a network and making sure that there's those appropriate measures in place so that we are able to track the impact. You can go a couple more
And
slides.
Lindsay,
Yes.
it's Barb. If I may stop here, there is one more change that's coming that we're a part of, and that's the Department of Veteran Affairs is really seeing the value of all the work that these communities have been doing and sees us as a great thought leader and partner with them. So it's not that you would be doing this work alone, that we will likely see a lot of engagement, both from the Department of Labor in terms of employment and what more we can do for our veterans, but the Department of Veteran Affairs and what they might contribute in a consistent manner to help and support and grow these networks. Thanks, Lindsay.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Barb. And, something I think is important to point out, there was just recently over $5 million or $52 million in federal grants that were released from the VA for suicide prevention activities to either coordinate for or provide services for suicide prevention. And all of that money was pushed down to community organizations. So many acting as a coordination center or other like entities. I can say, over 5.6 million went to those that are in our community of practice. So really proud of how that collaboration is existing and the support from the federal side as well.
And Lindsay brought up one more good point is that we helped those organizations make their grant applications so that we aren't in it just for the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. We really help those who are connected with us. And for those who didn't get the grants, we want to make sure that knowledge is shared. And that would be another benefit of working with us in the coming year on just this project. We will loop you into different connections and opportunities as they arise.
Thank you, Barb. You can go a couple of more slides. So the way that we really address coordinated care or approach coordinated care is really meeting communities where they are in the coordinated care continuum, and then making sure that we tailor a solution that can leverage pre-existing resources and collectively enhance that impact. So really looking at the 5 different buckets of the social determinants of health and matching up different so what you see there on the kind of left are a lot of the service need categories that a lot of our coordination centers and coordinated care networks will refer an individual into based on their need. They'll do a really comprehensive intake at the front, understand if there's any co-occurring needs that may be existing within an individual. Oftentimes, if I walk into a provider and I'm looking for help finding employment, typically through a conversation, you would also learn that I probably need childcare, or maybe there's a transportation challenge. And with a coordinated network and being able to send and receive referrals, then you're able to as the employment provider, be able to help me in those activities. And then while you may not do transportation, which is completely okay, because again, no single organization can solve all of the things, you're able to just push that referral out to somebody that is able to handle that, reducing a lot of your administrative burden in trying to identify somebody that is best suited to help. Go to the next slide, please. And with our approach in coordinated care, over the past 7+ years, we've grown to 18 America Serves proper affiliated networks and reaching more than 43,000 military connected clients. That's veterans, family members, spouses, dependents, and all of these individuals have had more than 106,000 unique service requests. And this is all done through over 1,000 provider organizations. So thousands and thousands of actual individual providers working within these organizations. But just to give you an idea of the breadth of this network. And as one of the networks, you're also included in our community of practice, which does give you access to several more communities and experts and thought leadership along the way. You can go a couple more slides. So many transition slides, right? So how we kind of approach this work and how we kind of are looking at it specifically in New Mexico as well. So we really have 4 buckets of our consultant type work. One is that landscape assessment where we're really looking at the needs of a community and identifying any existing collaborations and key stakeholders and working together to identify those gaps and needs. Along our strategy, we're working with a community to help them identify and mobilize those stakeholders. So looking to align a lot of that, those strategic goals, bringing in the right people, collaborating together to meet your community's needs. We are also paired at the Institute. So while we have our portfolios, we're supported by our research and analytics team, which is really amazing and unique for our Institute. Syracuse University is an R1 research institute, and we are backed by an entire army of researchers and evaluations, that's not a word, analysts and evaluation experts. Maybe I'll make it a word. That's a good one that you put together. Who are able to help communities identify their KPIs that are appropriate for what they're looking to get on the outcomes, helping them assess existing tools and screeners that may be most appropriate for what they're looking for, and then do that data analysis. And then, looking at in the final bucket of operations, really be able to kind of help a community with all of those back end things that help put everything together so that you can really utilize those kind of first 3 ones. If it's helping build out different toolkits, some train the trainer support, some journey maps and asset map building are really great tools that we can kind of help teach communities how to use and then apply as appropriate. But the biggest thing is that we want to work with a community regardless of where they are on that kind of continuum and get them most set up for success to be able to accomplish the goals that they have. Go to the next slide, please.
Lindsay, if I may add one more thing on what we're working on in the coming year. Also, adjacent to this portfolio, I have entrepreneurship for veterans and also employment and career preparation. And we're working to strengthen the bonds between these coordinated care networks and the referrals that we can give in the preparation for careers. So IVMF, all the things that we offer to our veteran and military connected community is at no cost, thanks to some really generous and sustained sponsors. So this would include things like paying for the certification and exams in the HR, program management, and IT fields so that it can be something that your community could learn that veterans need this. They're eligible for other services at the Institute. And you'll find that veteran entrepreneurship is a whole nother briefing on a different day about how veterans want to continue to serve in their communities by being employers. And there are some great opportunities in the state of New Mexico as well for those who want to work and and provide that service. So that's, as I said, a different brief, and you'll learn more about us in the coming year on what else might be possible. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you, Barb. And I think that's a really good point too, because, how we got started with our work in New Mexico is, slightly different and related to what we're doing now, starting off our work with the Hispano Chamber in Albuquerque and helping them build that employer coalition was really kind of how we got our start here and evolved conversations around how to be able to support this. So when we're looking at, those four kind of buckets and then, kind of transitioning as to like, how do we get there? How do we decide, or determine what your need may be, if it's in strategy or if it's in operations, or if you need a landscape or assessment, is we kind of follow this process of, discovering and understanding exactly what it is that your goals are as a community, and then being able to design that work with you and alongside you, and then implementing it. And then, because it's a cyclical process, and, it's funny, I made a note to myself earlier today of like, we should be adding measure along that curved arrow on that left-hand side, if you will, because while we're delivering it, we're evaluating what we're doing to make sure that it's still meeting your goals. And if your goals maybe have changed, which is okay, then what are we doing to kind of amend that process to still kind of fit your needs and ultimately delivering the correct product or most appropriate product. Go next.
I'm gonna break in here. I really love that. The constant process of evaluating and adjusting is fantastic. I hadn't heard that. I like that very much.
Thank you, Claudia. So now this is just a little bit more into more in depth in the project that we're going to be doing alongside you all in New Mexico. So this is just a quick snapshot. This is not everything all encompassing, but just taking a broad view at the population in New Mexico as we know it from, we pulled some of this from our VSTART tool, or that's repetitive. It's the Veteran Strategic tool. It's on our website, but it pulls from census data and gives you a really great snapshot. You can look at MSA data or veteran unemployment state. And it's really great that you can go and you can kind of look in different areas. But we know that veterans make up almost, over 9% of the population in the entire state of New Mexico. And then 20% of those veterans are living in rural areas. And we've learned a lot from our other landscape assessments and our work that it is really challenging to be able to deliver appropriate services or reach veterans that are in rural areas to get them to the services that they may need, that there may be barriers with transportation, services and care that they're not able to receive. So what can we design alongside to kind of help fill those gaps? So this is always really great for us to kind of take a look and kind of level set at the very beginning and kind of understand where to go and start from there. And Claudia, I'll send you the note or the link for VSTART afterwards in case anybody's interested in checking it out.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. So this is a really very detailed timeline of what we're going to be doing for the next 7-8 months here in New Mexico. So really kind of starting with that first group of identifying. So working closely with CNM and others of basically compiling a list to start with of appropriate service providers across the entire state to kind of start having conversations. We'll do some stakeholder interviews, and then we'll shift to focus groups, which will be on the ground and do on site across the state. I think we're planning on hosting more than 5 in different regions to make sure that we're inclusive of everybody across the state. We want to be able to take a look at existing collaboratives. We know that there's a network in Santa Fe. We know that we have other partners that we work with that are doing some great work on the Navajo Nation. So how do we identify, we want to be able to identify all of those different collaboratives, understand how they're collaborating, and then when we're making our recommendations, be able to include how we can be interoperable or connected to all of those networks and make a recommendation for one statewide access point. So once we're done with kind of those identifying needs and understanding, really what the landscape looks like, then we'll be able to come back and we'll review all of that and then build that recommendation brief for you all and go from there. And really plan to keep everybody kind of engaged as we're working along this. So just an idea of the project team, you'll have a breadth of us to be able to work with. Barb will be alongside, and then you've got myself, Lisa, and Vincent, who are really on the programmatic side, and then Mary Rachel and Zach, who really pair nicely with us on kind of that research and analytics side of helping pull a lot of the data. Zach is an expert in technology systems and will be helping to identify different technology that's used to collaborate across the state and making some recommendations on like key components when using technology for coordinated care network. That's really it for the conversation. There is kind of a short appendix here that you guys can look at there, but if you want to stop sharing, we can have a conversation, or if you want to keep them up and go back to anything, more than happy. But that was really our overview.
Here we go. Sorry, I was having a little bit of difficulty here with the internet. That's a fantastic overview, and I really appreciate it. I'd like to open it up for questions, and you can either type them into the chat and we can read them, or if you would like to ask them, I'll just call on people. So why don't I start out with Dorothy Seaton? You've got your hand up, ma'am.
I do. Thank you. And excuse my voice. I've got a head congestion. I have no idea what I sound like tonight. I can't hear myself. But I wanted to introduce myself to Lindsay and Barb. I'm a caucus member and a vice chair for legislative advocacy. But another part of my life, I'm the chair of the Mayor's Veterans Advisory Board in Santa Fe. And Lindsay brought up the Connect network that we use here in Santa Fe, which I think she's aware of. And the Veterans Advisory Board here has been using that network for a few years now with great success. So I'd love to connect you with our city staffer, who's really does a lot of our work with the mayor's office. And so I don't really have a question. I just want to make that connection with the two of you. That I'm out here, and if I can help you, I will. So let me know.
That was
Thank
generous.
you.
Yeah, Lindsay and I both knew we wanted to leave you with an ask, and you've done the first step, Dorothy, which is who should we be reaching out to that we may not know about yet?
Yeah, my staffer's name, if you want to take down her name, is Julie Sanchez.
Where's the hand?
And at some point, I can get you her contact information if you'd like to have it.
Absolutely. And I'll put our contact information in the chat too. I know it's on the slides, but I'll put it in here as well.
Okay.
Perfect. And when you get an offer from Dorothy to help, it's a big help.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Wait, we have one more thing going on here. This is Joan.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that as in my former life, I was a business analyst for many years, and I really appreciate the thoroughness and iterative process that you've developed that goes from the landscape assessment through shareholder engagement and the KPIs and the data analysis. I'm fascinated by that. It's a very mature process, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback.
I noticed that too, Joan, and I was really impressed. You know, we do some work with Department of Veteran Services and others in the state, and there seems to be a real lack of data. And I like making decisions based on data and the evaluation and analysis of it. So this is great to hear. All right, we've got one more question, got a couple more questions. Diane Kuderud, I think you've got someone there visiting you that's
Yeah.
got her hand up.
Hi, this is Myrna. I'm with Diane. I'm visiting.
Oh, Myrna, great.
Hi. I came in a little late for I missed the beginning, but I was looking at some of the data. I was wondering, it would be interesting to look at the intersection of the metrics around education level, if it was in the age section, at the intersection of age and education level. I'd just be interested to see what those percentages are per each age level. And the other question I have is, and I may have missed this, are you planning on being a clearinghouse for each group or offering a clearinghouse so that the resources, or are you expecting the agencies to collect information on ongoing services, and how does that get updated? Because one of the bugaboos that I remember from work is you would do all this survey work, and then 6 months later, organizations would change or resources would disappear or how are you planning on developing an end user program where, let's say you have these making contact with the resources and having them be able to interface with you and input data on a real basis, like what their capacity is for services, how it's going up and down, because agencies are under stress too as well. And it would be nice to have a user interface where people could, and also a case manager within each agency who could sort of help tease out, that's what I did. I was a case manager, and you have a caseload of 30 or 40, not too many clients, and you meet with them and you develop a plan of care for them, and they become the drivers of their needs, and then you update it, and then you can put the data in. And if there were some kind of way to do that, it might be helpful.
Yeah, so I can, I'll take a first shot at it, and Barb, if you want to fill in where I may miss. So what our intent is in this phase is really to take a full look and understanding as much as possible at how organizations and providers are collaborating, and if they are part of a coordinated care network, and really kind of seeing what gaps and opportunities may exist in each region of the state, to then be able to make a recommendation, and we'll provide that back to CNM to be able to then, we'll provide that briefing or that recommendation back to them with how we've reviewed everything, for them to be able to then go to the next phase, which is implementing.
Okay.
So while we were tasked or asked to kind of be able to assess the state's readiness for a coordinated care network at this phase, we're not standing up any networks.
Okay.
Down the road, depending on how that looks in the landscape assessment, will be, I know, fingers crossed, Claudia, that next phase is when we'll really kind of get into the work of designing and standing up a coordinated care network, where in many of those cases, providers and organizations are able to update their capacity, their eligibility requirements, their hours of operation, and then providers or coordination centers are able to kind of see that, so that when they're screening somebody for a need, they're able to appropriately match them with a provider that is able to accept them. And then care coordination and case management are very two different things where, especially in the care coordination world, you're really acting as that traffic cop and you're helping get folks to the right place. And your case, if you will, kind of ends once you've sent that appropriate referral. And then the provider on that other end is able to manage that more holistically and then identify any additional needs, provide the services. And then if it comes back to the coordination center for them to get matched with another provider, then they help take care of that. So really the coordination center and the coordinated care network is about navigating those services and getting them to the appropriate care that's necessary. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, it does. And it would not be nice if there were some way to have a hand in glove approach so that the care manager, if there is one, could get back with results or outcomes or whatever. I think that that would be a very, we're looking for seamless delivery of services and making sure that needs get met. And we want to have a robust network in this state. So I say bravo. What do you see as the timeline? I mean, you're going great guns. What do you have as your timeline for this phase before you get to the implementation?
Lindsay addressed your first questions really well, and I was going to add, Myrna, that all the things that you have concerns about we have seen in communities before, so there's nothing that we're hearing for the first time.
Great.
And that to build your confidence in that those who have coordinated care networks that we have helped establish in the past, although that's a different phase, referral and the meaningfulness of it are important measures so that if you do make a referral, there's transparency and accountability in the network.
Oh, great. Thank you.
What happened to that person?
Great.
Everybody, not everybody, but communities use their systems and technology differently. Some do use it for case management and some are purely referral. And, there's an all great aspiration to get everything done, but it really is step by step, and communities have a different appetite and different needs.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then just to address your second question on timeline, so our goal is to have the landscape assessment and recommendations complete by the end of May. And then we'll really be doing that engagement and conversations around what our recommendations are throughout the month of June, so that this phase of the project will wrap on June 30th of 2023.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, we've got one more question. James Shoup, over to you, sir.
Thank you. I'm not sure this is the proper venue for this, but I sat in to assist veterans in Luna County, actually 4 counties, with the Veterans Assistance Center would be one hat, and then the second hat is silver linings in dealing with homelessness. And find that there are veterans that are reluctant to reach out for services. A lot of it has to do with mental health issues. The first question, we have no hard facility for the homeless in Deming. We're currently working to achieve that, but with the recent downturn in the economy, our budget has taken a hit. And I'm wondering, looking for resources to be able to help offset that. We have a $15,000 shortfall, that and plus an increased violence against our facilities. So I wondered if there was anything as far as from the perspective of veterans or any other avenue that you might direct me toward to help with that shortfall. Because if we can't stay in the black with the limited services we have, my question would be, if I was the one in charge, I would say, can they handle, more responsibility?
Lindsay, let me see I'll take a shot at this one. That part of the survey that we do is the philanthropic landscape for the particular needs, which might have a national answer. There might be an agency that can support, and locally, meaning the state. What else might you do to find resources? Do we have a connection that you don't already have? Perhaps not. Then it sounds like that one is an urgent matter that might not
It
be
is.
resolved in this project's timeline, but it is one of the things that we're working on as a phase of this project, is to identify sources so that this can be sustained. Lindsay, what did I miss there?
And then the second part would be the second head is the Veterans Assistance Center. We have a bunch of elderly men out there trying to get the work done on, and they do every month, they hand out food. Well, we have two separate things going on. Number one, there's repair that needs to be done on the building, and, you know, they can't get any help doing it. That would be the first thing. The second thing is that they do get hand food out every month, but I mean, and not to be ungrateful, but it seems at times it's ill thought out and, you know, relatively short for the level of need, especially with prices going up.
That is a challenge, and while a coordinated care network may not address that challenge directly, I think definitely helping get connected to multiple providers, hopefully if they exist, or national providers, because we don't want to overtax one provider and pass their capacity. So that is where kind of that coordination center can help in identifying other providers or recruiting other providers to come in that can kind of help fill some of that need. I think also being part of the community of practice, we can help identify or really identify funding sources. Like I just thinking about what I've seen recently, and capital projects are really challenging to get funded. But I think that the HVRP grant which is a federal grant, was just issued or just put out for an RFP. Or NOFO, the funding announcement was just made, so that may be something to look into. But you know, within the community of practice, we're regularly identifying opportunities that could be a good fit for our community, and then bringing those up and sharing with the group so that they can kind of make that internal decision if it's appropriate for them to apply to or not.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm going to ask, it's H as in hotel, V as in Victor, R as in Romeo, K as in kilo?
P Papa.
P Papa, HVRP. Can you please send that to me?
I just put it in the chat. It's a Department of Labor program for homeless veteran.
Okay.
Lindsay, I believe
That would
that's
be
what you
excellent.
were-
And anything else you think might be applicable, because we have two major things. Number one, we have a lot of homeless and no place for them to go. And this is a wicked place to be homeless. New Mexico is. I'm from Michigan. It has its challenges too. But this, man, I'm going to tell you, it's hard. This is a hard place. And there should be no place, there should be nobody that is out in the inclement weather here. And we have lots of them. That is a problem.
Yeah, I completely understand, James, and we have the situation in Albuquerque, and actually it's nationwide, but you're making a very good point. James, do you have access to the chat? I don't know if you're on your phone or the computer.
I'm on my phone.
If you can you take a look at the chat? There's a lot of good information there. And
Okay.
also, I'm going to ask Taurus if you could save the chat, or Ivan save the chat. And James, I don't know if I've got your email or not, but if you can always find me. Go to the website.
Okay.
Send me an email and we can send you this information from the chat. I'd like to keep moving along. We've got another question.
Okay. Thank you very
so
much.
Are we, yes, sir. Thank you for joining us. Dorothy, you've got your hand up, ma'am.
Sure, I'll have a second helping here. I wanted to bring up the point to our guest speakers about veterans courts. The caucus and me in particular spent hours and hours and hours last year hosting a Zoom kind of think tank, if you will, or a brainstorming session with 5 of our judicial district attorneys here in our state who were interested in setting up veterans court services. similar to treatment courts. Does your evaluation touch on that? Do you include those kinds of services in your evaluation?
So in a number of our networks, the Veterans Treatment Court is one of the providers. We also have worked with, at the VA level, the incarcerated veterans program within the VA, where they have, even in areas that there aren't veterans courts, to be able to kind of help identify needs and reintegration tools and stuff to be able to help communities. So as a provider in the networks, they would definitely be part of our scope to bring them into the focus groups and the stakeholder calls to be able to understand their needs and their perspective on the communities as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing Barb's note in the chat. As far as I know, we have 3, maybe 4 active veteran treatment courts in the state. The ones that I was in contact with some months ago. I can send you my contact list of
That'd be
who was
fantastic.
coming to those Zoom meetings last year. And I believe since we did that initiative, there have been a couple more resources that opened up, some not specifically for veterans, but they're things that will help veterans in the court system related to addiction issues primarily, or violence issues. These are not your axe murderers and things. These are your, petty theft and assault and drug charges and things like that. Part of my civilian career, I spent 13 years in prison as a clinical director in a treatment program in a prison. So I was seeing this population incarcerated. And I was aware that there were treatment courts that were diversion courts that would keep people from going to prison if they could complete their court assignments. So this would be very helpful to the veteran population. And we've got a member of our caucus, Jeff Swanson, who's very active in this initiative as well. He's a good contact for you. So I can't wait to meet you, gals. Are you coming to New Mexico, or are you just visiting us in the cyber world?
We will be there after the new year, I think, is when we've got it kind of like slated in our big schedule.
Look forward to it.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Same.
Good. Well, I would like to ask Ivan if you could unmute Representative Debbie Sariñana. She's in the car driving back from Santa Fe and needs a little help with some hands-free here. Okay.
Okay, well,
Debbie
thank you.
Sariñana, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Claudia. And thank you, both presenters. That was wonderful. I knew this was a good bill when Senator Pope and I were carrying it, but now I understand it. So that's really good. Probably should have understood it before, but that's okay. But thank you for really giving details and how it should work. And I appreciate you so much. And I would like to meet you in January. But thank you again. And Claudia, thank you for bringing such great presenters. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for this
Thank you so much.
opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much, Representative Sariñana. She is Air Force veteran and just a super strong ally in the House for us in New Mexico. So we really enjoy working with her and Senator Pope and a number of the other representatives. We've got a Representative Meredith Dixon. Are you on board, or did she depart? She may have just stepped off, but she's a member of the caucus and is running for re-election. We've got a couple of candidates here, Janelle Anya Nornu, who is running for the House, Rudy Martinez, who was a representative off and on for a dozen years, and he leads our Committee for Veterans Advocacy. He's also on board. We've got Sharon Lee Cummins, who is running in an extremely tough race.
I have to interrupt you. You have to mention that Rudy's an Air Force vet. Rudy is an Air Force vet.
Oh. and Rudy is an Air Force veteran. And Sharon Lee Cummins is a Marine Corps veteran. And do we have anybody else who's running? Am I missing anyone, Dorothy? Oh, and Shannon Reynolds, of course, Air Force veteran, running for re-election. Shannon, speak for yourself. You're here.
Yes, I am running for re-election as a county commissioner here in Doña County, and my wife and I are both Air Force veterans. I'm a Vietnam era veteran. My wife was one of the first jet engine mechanics at Holloman Air Force Base in the 70s. She was one of just a few of them. And I will have to say, yes, I'm running. We had a fantastic debate last night, or I guess forum last night with my opponent, which is available from Temple Bethel. The whole video, it's like 2 hours, but I'm trying to have it cut down and cut in half so I can get the sheriff's part and my part separate. But I think our campaign's going well. We're having a great time down here, and looking forward to serving for another 4 years. And by the way, thanks for this presentation. I love what you guys are doing in Syracuse. I don't love Syracuse, but I love what you're doing.
We won't hold it against you, but you've got to appreciate our football team this year.
I love other parts of New York, but I've only been to Syracuse once or twice, and I didn't find it. It was usually in the winter. It was a little cold, but
I completely understand.
Thank you very much for taking the time to help us with this and what you're doing. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Shannon Reynolds is also one of our 2 CD2 vice chairs. Congressional District 2 is mostly the southern half of the state, although it's been redistricted a little bit. And then we've got Eleanor Chavez, who is running for House District 26. We've got her on board. So it's really nice to have all these candidates here. We have endorsed everybody who's on board. And Rudy Martinez, you've got a question. Go for it, sir. Rudy, you're on mute. And I don't see your face, so I don't know if your lips are moving.
I'm here somewhere.
There you are. All right, we found you. Go for it,
Yeah,
sir.
finally. Thank you for your presentation. You know, it's very encouraging that we will be able to work with you guys and certainly the information that we need for veterans. I live in a rural community and have represented the rural communities in across the state when I was serving as representative. As Claudia mentioned, I'm running for re-election, so we can continue that fight. One of the items that you mentioned was transportation, and I say we, Dr. Kaufman from UNM Health Science Director developed a pilot program which didn't get much traction in the legislature, but we're going to try it again to provide transportation for our veterans across the state. But I think that's one of the most important things, especially in the rural areas and for our indigenous brothers and sisters. So I certainly would like to continue being involved or having information provided on the transportation issue.
Thank you. It's Barb, and you're right. Transportation is often the first need of multiple needs that we can't solve for some other issues like employment unless someone has reliable transportation to get to that job. So we've heard that and have worked with communities to address that through their networks.
I appreciate that. And we have several World War II veterans in our area that have to travel to Albuquerque, which is about 250 miles from where we live. So it's a challenge for them to get up to the VA hospital in Albuquerque and then back on the same day. So those are some of the things that we really need to address, along with the homelessness. Even in small communities like ours, the number of homeless, not only veterans, but the number of homeless in this community. And it seems to spike. We live in the southwest part of the state, and we have transits that are coming in during the warm season, and they move on during the cold weather. So, but we have one facility that tries to provide housing for those homeless. So I realize that's a national issue, and it's also statewide. So I don't know what. I guess we haven't found an answer for it yet. So I appreciate your presentation, and Claudia, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Rudy. Appreciate it. You've kind of teed up a question that I had jotted down here. We've got a large population of Navajo, tribal folks, Pueblo folks. And Lindsay, when Greg and I have spoken with you, I think you talked about how you're going to tailor this landscape assessment to certainly include the Navajo Nation and others. Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so our goal is to be as absolutely inclusive as possible, and ensuring that we identify needs and gaps that may exist for all special populations, including those that are Indigenous. So we've worked with partners in the past that are actually doing some work on the Navajo Nation, and intend to speak to them, as well as working alongside you all, and who's appropriate, to make sure that we're entering these conversations with the right people, and approaching them the right way, to really understand the needs that may exist, so that when we are making recommendations, we're doing so appropriately to make sure that it's inclusive and addressing needs of everybody that lives in the state.
And Lindsay, if I may just talk about one of our partners that we're not doing exactly the same work, but America's Warrior Partnership, if you have heard of them, they are doing some work with the Navajo Nation. And many nations they cross state borders. And so some of these are artificial borders, and so we have a great collaborative relationship. I will put in the link to America Warriors Partnership, who's working across several states with the Navajo. And just to let you know that we are not creating boundaries amongst those of us who are trying to do good work in the same space. And that's in the chat.
So I'd like to ask, because I know the Navajo Nation goes into other U.S. states. Is Arizona one of the sites of America Serves?
We do not have an America Serves network in Arizona, but we do have, I almost said friends, but we do have friends in a lot of states that we work with. So oftentimes we'll have somebody that will come upon us or be referred to us that aren't in a location that has like an America Serves network. So we do have a number of national partners, one of them being America's Warrior Partnership, that we're able to make referrals to. So if they do fall outside of a physical location, then we're able to still connect them with appropriate people.
Okay. And one other question I had as I was listening to you, the PACT Act was just signed, and Dorothy and Greg and Terry and I had a meeting with Robin Wilson, who's the new director of field services for the Department of Veteran Services in New Mexico. And she was saying they anticipate a real spike in veterans coming to seek benefits now that these the folks who were exposed to toxins in the air or water have been recognized. This is a huge expansion of veterans benefits. I think Greg had mentioned that it's second only to like the GI Bill. So this is huge. So they need to hire more caseworkers who are their veteran services officers. Are you going to be cognizant of this, or the folks who are doing the landscape assessment here? cognizant that we should be experiencing a huge surge in demand for services based on this PACT Act?
Lindsay, a couple strings. Yes, we're aware, and this wouldn't be the place where we are expert, that we would make sure that people are connected, whether it's in the community, both to the Veteran Affairs, but also the Wounded Warrior Project did an amazing webinar on the PACT Act and its implementation, and gave some great tips for those who might have one of the, I think we have 23 conditions that could be caused by that exposure. If I can find a link to it, I'll put it in the chat, but that's an amazing resource. So we will, I think Lindsay would join me in this. We cannot solve all, but we are aware of most. And that we—
No, I didn't mean to solve it. I just mean to
No.
be aware of it. Yeah.
Certainly, but it might not be something that we could directly say for the PACT Act, we would recommend this kind of network or attention, but we do feel like we're trying to stay abreast of all that is happening. And certainly you have picked one topic, Claudia, that is going to drive a lot of resources to the VA. And we want them to be prepared and have a sense of that scale.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Yeah, we would love to have that video. And if you can't find it now, you've got my contact information, send it to me. I'd like to load that up on our website rather than duplicating it. You know, if someone's like the Wounded Warrior group has done a good video on this, I'd love to put that on our website. And I've got a couple other groups that we work with, including Women Veterans of New Mexico, that would probably want to share that as well. There isn't enough information out there, and we need to start to talk to veterans about that. Okay. Let's see. So do we have any other questions from anyone in the audience here, folks? So that means it was a very thorough presentation and really good. I would just like to summarize some of the key points that that you caught my ear, that I'm impressed with. I like it that you tailor the networks to meet the needs of each specific site. I think that's very important. I really like it that you've got a number of sites out there and you're determining best business practices and incorporating that as you bring more cities and states on board. The process of constant evaluation is fantastic. Being, 29-year Navy veteran, we were always evaluated and we always evaluated everybody else. And there's no better way to keep things current and accurate than by taking a good look at it. The analysis and evaluations of data, and you're focused on bringing data into it. So you're making decisions based on evidence. And I'm really glad that DVA sees value in what you're doing. It's wonderful to be partnering and not working against each other. We've got so many silos out there. One of the things that I hear whenever I talk to new members or talk to veterans is that they try with the VA and it's impenetrable. They can't get through the obstacle course. Just the VA itself is a huge barrier. And luckily they've got patient advocates that will help people. But I've talked to two people recently, both Vietnam veterans, and one of them, Representative Alcone, just got his disability evaluation last year. He served in the Vietnam War. That's how long that took. And another gentleman was a retired Marine, and he said that he got his 4 years ago. He's 80 years old. He got his 4 years ago. And it was through the caseworkers at New Mexico Department of Veteran Services. So it's just super important to keep reaching out to people. But if we can, get this network and have the coordination, especially in our extremely rural state, I think it's going to be so valuable. So does anyone else have a last minute alibi before we turn it over to Lindsay and Barbara?
I do.
Okay, and I do is...
Spike here.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Just an attaboy, attagirl for the VMF at Syracuse University. The Economist News magazine last year had an extended article about how veterans and active duty are active and not necessarily voting Republican or Mr. Trump. That's not what the Attaboy is about. It's the fact that they use the VMF from Syracuse University for a lot of their data, which says something for what you do for military families, regardless of party affiliation. And so I appreciate your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Spike. And we have other research insights. We'll share those with Claudia. We gave you up high up in the chat, the VSTART, that's looking at every state, your veteran demographics. So that link is there. But we do have more to share and are pleased when people can reference it. We want more people to be paying attention and be aware of the veterans beyond the anecdote. Whether a hero, a victim, there's a lot in between, right? And we want to elevate that to solve this with some policy and good people.
That's exactly right. And that's the kind of help that we need as we work with the legislators. We try to be a resource for our legislators. We're the last state with the all-volunteer force. Our legislators aren't paid. They don't have paid staff. They work 30 days one year, 60 days another year. And we've reached out to so many of them, and they're extremely receptive to helping with any legislation that would help our veterans. But the data that you can give us, we can put it on our website, we can push it out to them, and they don't have to waste their very limited time, running down information when you've got it available. It's fantastic. Okay. So Lindsay, is there anything you'd like to close with, ma'am?
Just to say thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and letting us speak to you all and give you an update on the project. And would just ask, we wanted to leave you guys, as Barb had said before, kind of a call to action. If there's anything that you see along the way and think that we need to be engaging with somebody, like please feel free to reach out to Barb or myself or anybody on our team to help connect us. And make sure that we are talking to as many people across the state as possible.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I'd just like to, before we sign off for the evening, we've been talking about the issue with homelessness and with veterans. Our November guest speaker, which is going to be the 16th of November, is going to be the CEO and the director, two different speakers from the Veterans Integration Center. In Albuquerque, they've got a huge $3.2 million housing project that was just funded. I attended a brief about 6 weeks ago in person, and I've invited them to do it on Zoom. So please come back and join us for the November guest speaker series. And you women are both invited, of course. So thank you so much, everybody. This was a wonderful guest speaker series. Barbara and Lindsay, you did a fabulous job. I appreciate you sending the PowerPoint and all of these links, which we will copy and start populating our website with.
Yeah,
So thank you
Claudia,
so-
I can send you a more thorough email tomorrow of kind of rolling up all of these resources and stuff. I took a note of the things that we shared. So I'll put together a much more thoughtful note to you with everything kind of highlighted and why we had shared that site to you too. So I've got that for action.
Perfect. I really appreciate it. So let's unmute, folks, and let's thank our guest speakers tonight, huh?
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent.
Yeah.
presentation.
Excellent
Good night, everybody.
presentation. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right. Good night, folks. Enjoy your
Good night.
evening.
you too.
Good night.
Good night.